Should you be given time off if you lose a pet? Okay? Should you be given time off if you lose a pet? So, for example, as you well know, I have two dogs that I worship. We have Sparky and we have Molly. And they're so important in our house. They're everything in our house. And I wonder...
Do you treat them like kids?
Oh, you better believe we do. Yeah,
okay.
100%.
So would you be as upset if they died as
I dread the thought.
No, let me ask the question. Would you be as upset if they died as you would be a family member? I remember your grandmother died last year. Was it last year?
Last year. No, it was last year, yeah. And I was devastated, obviously, when my grandmother passed away.
Yeah, would you be as devastated if one of the dogs died?
No, possibly not. My dogs are only in our lives maybe... My grandma's on this planet 98 years, okay? But it does raise the question about whether or not you should be entitled to compassionate leave from work. So here's our two. Look. Now, I am telling you that I would be devastated if something were to happen to one of our lads.
Yeah, but you don't need
Sparky and Molly.
Yes, but you don't need time off. There's no funeral for them. You don't need to attend a funeral or a removal service. They're not going to be having a wake in your living room, you know what I mean, in an open casket. Do you get the point I'm making?
Yeah, but I can tell you...
you don't have any... When someone dies, when a family member dies, there's so many arrangements to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And when my father passed away, and most of my time was taken up arranging things with the family, you don't have any of that when an animal dies. Sure you don't?
No, you don't. But I can tell you... In fact, I only had this conversation with my wife the other day. I can tell you that I will be devastated. I will be inconsolable if something were to happen to one of our dogs, especially Sparky, because we have Sparky. Sparky's the bigger dog there. We've had Sparky since 2011. So he's been in our lives over 10 years, and I am telling you, I would be devastated.
Devastated?
I would be devastated.
Sorry, devastated to the point that you couldn't get into the car and go into work? That kind of devastated?
I just think people should be given a little bit of leeway. And, over the last 10 years, 11 years nearly, I've mentioned that dog all the time. Sparky, 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 Sparky. Yeah? To the point that he is that important a part of my life. And the question that we want to ask is, should people be given compassionate leave if one of their pets dies? 085 825 2626. It's a simple yes-no answer. Should you get compassionate leave if one of your pets die? Particularly... an animal that may have been in your life a long time, like Sparky. He's been around since 2011. I can't imagine my life without him.
Ah, Jesus, would you stop?
No, that's
I can't
the truth.
Imagine what your life's not going to continue. No. You're being a bit dramatic now.
085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. Just simply send us a yes or a no. Should people be given even one day of compassionate leave if their dog were to die? So say, for example, this morning, Jeremy, before we come out to work, and God forbid, actually, just the thought is horrific, I walk into the kitchen, I'm about to go to work, and there's poor old Sparky dead on the floor. Now, are you telling me that I should just leave him there and hop in the car and come in here with a big smile on my face?
No, but I'm saying you could probably drop him off at the vets where they would look after him and send him up to be cremated and stuff like that, which is normally what...
But I shouldn't get any time off.
Well, we're self-employed. You're your own boss, and I'm my own boss. So it's kind of...
Are we going to have a falling out if I take time off because I want to attend to Sparky?
No, I'd give you a day.
A day?
I'll give you a day. Yeah.
That's it?
That's it.
No more time than that?
What more time are you having a wake for the dog?
Maybe.
The dog's going to be in an open casket in the living room.
Maybe. 085 825 2626. Send us a simple yes or no. Should companies give staff compassionate leave if they lose a dear family pet? Because And maybe, you've mentioned this many times. You're made of stone. Your heart is made of stone. You've
soul.
no compassion, no soul.
Yeah.
Therefore, you probably can't relate to this. You've never been close enough to an animal.
We've 2 cats. So
Yeah,
absolutely...
cats.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, I want to bring in one of our old friends and an animal rights expert. Is that a great way to introduce you, John Carmody?
Good morning, Adrian. I don't know if I'm being an expert, but I just have a little bit of cop on when it comes to joining the dots when it comes to animals and their feelings. So, yeah.
So, John, should companies offer compassionate leave if somebody loses a pet?
You know, Adrian, it's a good question. I think it's timely that you're picking up on this, actually, because last week we had this whole conversation about new legislation, apparently, between now and 2025, where I think everyone will be getting, 10 sick days leave. But again, there was no conversation around when companion animals die. And I have to say, Adrian, you are not being over dramatic when you talk about Sparky, and if you want to return home and you were to learn of his death, you're probably like most people listening to your show this morning who have dogs and who have cats as well. And those companion animals, and you don't need to hear this from me, form very close bonds with their guardians. And I call them guardians because I don't believe in having ownership over animals. So it's good that we've started a possible conversation around this, because you'd probably have to have a companion animal, or you'd have to have been there in the past where you've had the death of a beloved companion animal. So you just ideally know what it's like to have a death in your family from a companion animal, and to know that if and when this does happen, going into work, your head wouldn't be. You absolutely.
No, I can tell you. I mean, the start of my day every morning before I go to work is Sparky and Molly, the two of them, bound out of their beds, jump all over me, go out, do their wee, and then as soon as I get home from work, I take them out for their walk and everything else. And it's such a part. And then in the evening, you're sitting on the sofa and they're sitting beside you, and yeah, they're just such an important part of the family.
So we get that, but they're not your kids. And there's messages coming in, which I have to say, and I'm sorry, John, there's messages coming in which I find a bit offensive on Facebook.
Offensive?
Offensive, because they're saying losing a pet is like losing a child. Oh my God, that is a...
Well...
I don't know how you can equate. I don't know how you can equate both, because I know people who have lost children, and nothing in this world equates to that. And I'm sorry, losing a 4-legged animal does not equate.
What if you don't have children? What if your dog is your child? That's the point. For some people, that is the importance of their relationship with their pet.
Losing a pet is not the same as losing a child.
But here's the thing, if I can say this, please. The reality is that there's room for compassion for both. And just because it's a dog or a cat or a gerbil or a fish, and that could be a problem, you see, with employers, because in this country at the minute, there is no legislation that provides for leave for companion animals. It's obviously just family at the minute, very immediate family, like mum or dad or brothers or sisters or something like that. But the reality is that as the conversation around animals being sentient beings, and as we now learn more about animals and how intrinsic they are and the value, for instance, companion animals play in our lives, the conversation is only naturally going to have to come around one way or another, whether we like it or not, with regard to the question, should we start giving employers should be given employees time off. And I think any employer worth their salt who have good policies in place that show their care for employees should start looking at this area to see if we could give a day or two off to employees who would have deaths of companion animals in their family.
Like I said, I can't understand for the life of me why a company... I like a lot of things. It's probably open to abuse that you'll have people, oh, my goldfish died and I was really attached to my goldfish. I think it would have to be very clearly spelled out that it would have to be a cat or a dog, let's say, and maybe you have to have owned the cat or dog for a number of years. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't get a dog on Monday, it die on Tuesday, and you take Wednesday off. So I think there has to be some rhyme or reason to it. But you believe that these animals, these pets, and in my case I'm talking about dogs, are such an important part of the family that you do grieve in the same way, maybe not, the impact may be not as severe as losing a family member, but it's still quite severe.
I don't think you can even put the two in the same sentence, can you, John?
Well, you know what? I think you can, because it's we really don't need to compare here, to be quite honest. It's no one taken from the death of a loved one. And there should be room in a more compassionate society. There should be a little bit of leeway for guardians of companion animals to take time out of work. Now, yes, I have been reading up on like how employers would kind of define like leave for a companion animal. It would mean that, for instance, if you have two goldfish, or if you have a hamster or a gerbil, and if one of them die, can you get 2 or 3 days after it? And a couple of months later, if another fish dies,
exactly.
See, that's another whole big area, and I wouldn't lessen their lives for the record, to be quite honest with you. And yes, you're probably going to get like a million messages coming through saying get that nut job off the air. But the reality is that I would honestly like to maybe hear from people who are listening this morning where they would stand in terms of their companion animals, whether they have dogs or cats, and if it was a case where they were to lose them, would they feel that they could be entitled to a day or two off?
And this is the point that I was making. If, God forbid, and it will happen one day, I dread the thought, but it will happen one day. If, God forbid, I were to get up this morning and poor old Sparky was dead in the kitchen, Jeremy is saying, get up off your arse and get into work. It's only a bloody dog. Yeah, drop it to the vet, let him cremate him and get on with your life.
But the country can't stop because of the death of animals.
I'm not talking about stopping the country. I'm talking about, it's called compassionate leave. I'm talking about a bit of compassion. I'm not talking about shutting down Ireland because Sparky dies. Let me go to another dog expert. Paul, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian. How are you?
Good, thanks, Paul. Paul, do you think companies should give compassionate leave if somebody were to lose a pet?
If it was a dog or a cat that they'd had in their lives for a long period of time and that they had a strong bond with, then yes, because unfortunately it does affect you when you lose a pet. The prime example was yesterday. Somebody I knew was bringing their elderly dog who had been in their life a long time to the vet for its trip across the Rainbow Bridge. Unfortunately, I went round just to say hello, and the poor lady was inconsolable. Now, what you've got to think of is, if that happens and somebody goes into work, what use are they going to be in work anyway? At the end of the day, these people have feelings for that animal, so they will have built that bond, and they will miss them dearly. And yeah, a lot of people will probably think, oh, you can't talk like that about an animal. Like Jeremy's one in case there, because he hasn't got that bond. Yes, he's got 2 cats. And cats are slightly more independent than dogs. Dogs become like babies.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they're not as dependent on you. They're not. They don't need you for their food, because if you don't feed them, they'll just head off to the next door neighbour. They aren't as reliant on you as if you have cats. And Jeremy, that is a fact. A cat is a completely different creature.
I get the difference between cats and dogs. I do.
Yeah. Okay. So, you think, Paul, that it would be reasonable to give somebody a day off to mourn the loss of their animal?
I do, yes. And as I say, I've been affected at it in so many ways throughout the years with various animals, various clients' animals, and I see the effect it has on people and the effect it's had on myself. And there are times where, you're not going to be able to face it. I'm not talking about people just using it as an excuse for the day off. But, if there is that bond there, you can clearly hear from someone when they are in that position, when they are going to break down. Like, heaven forbid anything happened to Sparky or Molly. You know what I mean? It is one of those things. And believe it or not, I know a lady out in the States, and she has actually written a book on how to cope with the grief of losing your pet.
Right. Okay. So the fact of the matter is that this is a serious issue. We're very good at being compassionate towards staff, towards colleagues, towards friends when they lose somebody close to them. Losing a pet for many is the same thing, isn't it?
Exactly. A lot of people devote their life to their pet. And I know some people out there whose pets are their babies, but they can't have, unfortunately, children. So their pet becomes their life. Their pet becomes everything to them. So they are bound to feel a great loss should they lose them.
But not let's be rational here and reasonable here. Not the same feeling when you.
How can you define that?
Because
you just heard Paul say that the lady he was talking about yesterday was inconsolable.
Okay, well, Paul, would you compare losing a pet to losing a child?
To be honest with you, there isn't a comparison. They're two different.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to say.
Two different levels. One has. At the end of the day, one is something, one is a child, part of you. They are part of you.
Yeah.
One has come into your life and become part of the family.
That's the difference. You will never get over the loss of a family member, and in particular a child. You will get over the loss of a dog or a cat. 100% you will. In time. It'll take time, but you will. I mean, Adrian, I'm sure you had a dog when you were a kid, did you?
Did, yeah.
You probably can't even remember his name.
No, of course I can. Judy was her name.
Judy, do you still cry about the loss of Judy?
It was 30 years ago.
Yeah, there you go. If that was a child...
You could say that about any loss.
No.
All right, 085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. We'd like to get you involved in this conversation. And the question we're asking is quite simple. Should companies give time off to staff if the staff member lost a child? Or lost a dog or a cat. 085 825 2626. Niamh, good morning to you. You're on Opinions Matter. How are you?
I'm grand, Adrian. How are you?
I'm good, Niamh. Niamh, should we get time off if we lose our dog or our cat?
I think that employers should be sympathetic, and people can even take time off for anything. The employers won't question it. I don't think it should be paid. Like, if you lose, I have to agree with Jeremy. If you lose a child, a child is completely and utterly irreplaceable. You'll never get over that loss.
Yeah, of course.
You can move on from a pet. You can get another dog. I think, yes, obviously employers should be sympathetic to it. And if you ring up and say, look, I'm devastated, an employer should say, that's no problem. Take a day or so. But employers, especially small businesses, they're struggling as it is. We can't afford to start paying for this. Most companies begrudge sick leave for humans, let alone an animal. So I can't see them agreeing to pay this. And then you'd have the other employees who don't have pets kicking off saying, oh, I don't get time off. So I think, yes, take some time to recover. It's a loss like anything else. But I can't see it being paid. I don't think it should be paid because it's something that you're taking.
Okay, but we're talking about a day, maybe 2 days max.
But a lot of employers, my own included, don't even pay that for when you're sick.
Okay, well, that is something, as we know from the new legislation that's coming in, that they're going to have to do.
I know, thank God.
Yeah, no, which is a great thing. It really is a great thing.
It is, because it stops people, people going into work sick. In the last year, we've learned what that can do.
Yeah, and the whole COVID crisis has shown the dangers of going into work when you're sick just because you won't get sick pay. So, yeah. But you don't believe it should be paid. So your boss should say, you can have a day off today, but don't expect to get paid for it.
Yeah, I think so. There's so much going on at the moment that, small businesses, their margins have been cut to nothing in the last 18 months, and I just don't think that we can afford it.
And here's the point as well, Niamh, that nobody has made yet. Death in itself, death is subjective, okay? You can lose a mother or a father next week and not feel anything because you weren't close to them, okay?
Yeah, of course.
But you can lose a second cousin twice removed who you grew up with and who was your best friend and be more
affected by it,
affected by it and upset at that. So,
or even a friend, somebody that you're not blood related to.
Yeah, because people always assume you should be more upset if you lose a mother or a father or a brother or a sister. But it depends on how close you are to the person, doesn't it? And not everybody, Adrian, is close to their pets. A lot of people have a dog or a cat, and it's just the old furry mouldy thing that's in the house. You know, they don't pay it. Like, I understand, Adrian, when you talk about your dog, you talk about your dogs more than you talk about your kids. Actually,
Yeah, but that's the truth.
which is a bit worrying.
Well, it's not, no, because I don't live with my kids, but I do live with my dogs, and my dogs are around me all day, every day. So, yeah, I do. And obviously, I'm going to talk about them a lot more. For example, we were here on the beach a couple of days ago, and Molly went chasing a kite, you know, the surf kiting fella, chased him up and down the bloody beach. And that was, I took up my camera, I videoed her doing it, all of that. So they are a really important part of your life. That's my point.
But Neve's point is that it will be abused. Here, by the way, Adrian, if you want to take 5 days, by the way, it's like you're wishing the dog's dead at this stage. If you want to take 5...
No, obviously I'm not.
Yeah, but you keep going on about it. The fact that you had this conversation with your wife the other night is a bit bizarre. You never talked about...
No, because we thought Sparky was sick.
Relax.
And then the two of us got to talking about, my God.
Anyway, you know, if you wanted to take off... the point Neve is making is, and you're right, Neve, that if people knew they weren't getting those days for free, they'd soon change their attitude towards it.
Oh, well, I think that they should be allowed to take it. I mean,
yes, at their own expense, though. Would you not agree? Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you know you're being paid for something, you know, you might take a little bit longer. You know, look, I think that when it comes to a pet, it's incredibly sad when they die. But I just can't. I'm with you, Jeremy. I can't equate comparing us to a child. You know,
no, there is no comparison. It's wrong to compare them. But
why do dog owners always say, "Oh, losing Sparky was like losing a child"? It's
because
absolutely...
You just heard Paul a while ago describe it. This lady he was with yesterday as being inconsolable.
Oh, yeah, inconsolable.
085 825 2626. Should companies give staff a day off if they lose a pet? Let's have a listen to this WhatsApp voice note from Dave.
Hey Adrian, Jeremy, Dave here. I do think that people should get compassionate leave if they have animals and they pass away. I don't think it's a snowflake thing. You can't put every single thing down to being a snowflake these days. Everyone puts everything down to being a snowflake. If anyone shows a little bit of heart or being upset about something, I myself know where Christy Dignam's coming from, because I've lost my parents when I was 18 and it did really hurt. But I have 2 cats now, and I know the day that I lose them, it's going to hurt equally as much. 8 years ago, I was in the gutter. I was unemployed. I was depressed. I was suicidal. And I got these 2 cats, and they turned my life around. It gave me a reason to get up out of bed. I know it sounds sappy, but I'm just going to be honest. It gave me a reason to get up out of bed and get after life. This week, I just got engaged. I'm going to be getting married next year. I just bought myself a house as well. I'm in a good job, good salary, and I definitely put it down to me 2 best pals, Gypsy and Roman, my 2 cats. And they definitely turned my focus around on life and gave me a few laughs when I kind of didn't think I could laugh about anything. And I know the day that they do pass away, which it will happen, that I will be very upset, and I probably won't be able to do anything for a couple of days at least. And anyone who doesn't think that you should take compassion leave, that's fine. But I don't think people fully realise that people do have such a heart connection with animals. I love my animals as much as I do any person or more, you know. So, look, that's the way it is with me anyway. Each to their own. But that's my story anyway.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful to hear.
Loves his animals. Gypsy and Roman, you just heard their names.
No, and it's beautiful to hear that they got him through a very difficult stage where he was feeling down and, you know, depressed and stuff like that. And animals are, and nobody's doubting that, animals are absolutely brilliant for doing that. But, you know, when pet owners tell you I'm still mourning the loss of my pet 2 years later, I don't buy that. I just don't buy it.
Right,
most people, by the way,
you don't have a heart. That's
I do
the
have a heart,
but you don't.
Most people, when they lose a dog or a cat, they don't go out and get a new one straight away, because that would look stupid, you know. Mm-hmm. They'd be judged for that.
Yeah.
But within 4 or 5 weeks, they're back up in the DSPCA up in the mountains, and they're picking out a new one. You know what I mean? They are. If you were mourning that, you'd have your dogs replaced before they were even in their grave.
No, I certainly would not. No.
So who'd you go walking with then?
Leonard sent us this WhatsApp voice note.
Hi guys, Leonard here. For me, pets are just like little kids, so when they die, it's actually shocking for all family and friends. So I think they deserve some respect and some type of little service. Cheers, guys.
Yeah,
Bye.
absolutely. I think we'd have a little funeral service for one of our dogs if God forbid, they were to pass away.
Any excuse for a piss up, isn't that right?
Actually, yeah. Tom sent us this message.
Yeah, like it's an interesting topic, and it's obviously not a new one. Like we've talked about it before, but I suppose like it depends on how close you are to the dog or to the animal, because I'm just aware that like the reason for your time off isn't to plan a funeral, isn't to be dealing with relatives when someone or something dies. It's to cope with the emotional burden. It's to get used to the environment, to get used to what's happened, to adapt to it. And that's what takes the day or days after. And that's why I think that it should be, I suppose, like it most probably it should be for people who were close to their animals. Obviously, if you're not very close to it, then that's going to be an issue. And then who do you decide is closer to their Sparky than someone else? But I do agree, time should be let off.
Yep, there you are. We need time off if we lose one of our pets. What's your cat's name? Do you even know your cat's name?
Who, me, you're asking?
Yeah.
Obviously, I know my cat.
What's your cat's name?
I have 2 cats.
What are your cat's names?
Buddy
Yeah.
is the first one, who's named after Cake Boss. You know Cake Boss?
No.
Okay, the rest of you know who Cake Boss is. The TV program about the baker. His name is Buddy. So the cat's named after him.
So one of your dogs is called Buddy. How are you, Buddy?
Yeah.
Is that what you say to your dog?
Well,
your cat?
if you want to say hello to him, yeah, you say, how you doing, buddy? And the other is called Mr. Puds.
So Buddy and Mr. Puds.
And he gets very upset if you don't put the Mr. in front of it.
Can I ask you a question? How come, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, you've no real connection, they're just bloody cats, they come and go. How come you never speak about them? How come you never talk about them running up and down Portmarnock Strand, chasing a kite surfer? How come you never talk about that?
It'd make national news now if the cats were running up and down Portmarnock Strand.
Okay, how come you never talk about the lovely walks you have with them?
Because they're cats. They don't go for walks.
Yeah, you see, they're just...
I talk about my kids. You don't have... Your kids aren't part of your life anymore. So
well, they are, but they're grown up.
Yeah, but they've gone their own way. They don't need you anymore. They don't need Adrian's pocket anymore. So
no, that's true.
They need you. It's funny. As soon as they got their own jobs, Daddy was left by the wayside, weren't you? You were like, that old sock that you see at the side of the road that's not used anymore.
Okay.
Whatever. My point is, you've done what a lot of people have done. You were replacing the void. Now, here's some psychological stuff for you, okay? I'm going to psychological analyze you now. You're replacing the void left in your life after your kids decided they don't need you anymore with 2 furry animals. And it's actually quite sad.
You're pathetic. Vivian lost her dog a few weeks ago.
Morning, guys. In regards to dogs, we lost our dog, our family dog that we had for 10 years a few weeks ago, and the loss is absolutely devastating. Not only for me, but for the kids. We had my youngest is 10, so he didn't know life without her really, and our home just isn't the same. So I do think that there should be some compassion. I don't think you would be very productive in work when you're that devastated. Thanks a million. Bye.
You wouldn't be very productive in work if you come in the day your dog has just passed
like
away.
saying then we start giving time off. If myself and Adrian used to work with someone who was guilty of this. We all have that one person in our workplace who doesn't leave their shit at the door, don't we?
Yep.
And we used to work with someone who had a lot of relationship issues. One of these people, every day she'd be breaking up with her boyfriend, wouldn't she? And she would come into work and you'd know as soon as she walked in the door, Adrian would nudge me and say, the mascara is running, we're in trouble here. And she would arrive in and you'd say, what's wrong? I had a row with my boyfriend last night, he doesn't love me anymore. And for the whole day, she would be completely useless.
Inconsolable.
My whole thing about, I have a very clinical approach towards this whole thing, when it comes to work, no matter what is happening in your life at the moment, leave your shit at the door. Do you not agree?
Yeah, unless your dog dies. This is a WhatsApp voice note from Shauna.
Hey, lads. Yeah, I wrote on your status on Facebook, and I definitely think it should be a thing, because your pets do become part of your family, and people writing on it saying, oh, you can just get a new cat and dog. Like, you wouldn't say that to someone like whose nanny is at the dying, or so you have another nanny. It's just, pets do become part of your family, and you do get fairly upset when that happens to them.
All right, 085 825 2626 is our WhatsApp number. I'd love to hear from you and find out whether or not you think people should be given compassionate leave if, God forbid, they were to lose one of their pets. Now, this whole conversation actually was sparked by a piece that we were reading earlier on today. And the headline of this piece reads, Christy Dignam absolutely devastated over family death that's worse than dad dying. Now, Christy's dad, Christy Sr., sadly passed away in May of last year after a battle with COVID-19. But Christy, in an interview, said that, yes, it was extremely difficult losing his dad, but a short time later, it was even worse losing his dog. And Christy, good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
No problem, Adrian.
Christy, obviously losing your dad last year was a devastating experience. And maybe it's... How would you describe the difference then? Yeah.
So my father, he got dementia about a year ago, and he was in the nursing home, and then he got the COVID when he was in the nursing home. Now, a couple of days before he died, we all went up and stood outside the window to wave at him and stuff. And it was an absolute nightmare, and he was confused. He didn't know what was happening. He couldn't understand the whole COVID thing. We couldn't visit him. So it was a release for him to go, even though it was very sad that he passed away, and, we were all in bits and stuff. But for some reason, I was upset, obviously, but, I kind of got, I justified it by saying, well, look, he had a great life. He was 88 years of age, and, he was really ill. So
that made it easier to cope with, because perhaps it wasn't unexpected, I suppose.
Yes. And with the dog, I had the dog for 12 years. Now, Jack came everywhere with me. He was my wingman. I absolutely loved him. So I let him out to go to the toilet one morning, and he didn't come back in. When I went out, he was panting out the back. So I rang the vet, and the vet said, come on Skype there and show me his teeth and his eyes. She says, bring him down to me. So I brought him down. He said, look, he has a bit of fluid, he says, on his lungs. He says, I'll give him a diuretic strip, he says, and I'll ring you when he's okay. So I got home, 10 minutes later, he rang. He says, can you come back down? He says, the dog's he started coughing up, vomiting up blood and stuff. He popped a heart valve anyway. So he was put down there and then. And I was absolutely devastated. Like, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep for about 3 days. I was absolutely devastated. I've never felt pain like it. Honest to God.